Hello, Emily Miller.
Hi, Kate Richburg. Feels like days since I saw you in the desert.
Right?
Days.
And the last live broadcast I did from my pajamas.
Did you really? Oh my
I
gosh.
did. I did a broadcast in my pajamas and talked all about Tucson. It was amazing.
Oh, I think I saw part of that. I think I did see part of that happening. Yeah. I don't
It
remember where
was
it was or what the heck I was doing. I lost track of what day it was. I
it was.
really had no. Yeah. That, I mean, Tucson it's kind of an experience, and I felt like I was really excited to be there, and I was really jazzed up. And of course, I had my sisters with me, which also
Yes.
was just a treat to spend some time with them and to sort of show them my crazy world of Tucson.
It
And
was so great to meet your sisters too. I felt like they were my sisters. I hope they didn't think I was too crazy.
no, absolutely not. My sister Barbara is a big quilter, and so she totally got what we like about jewelry and how we feel about jewelry the way she feels about quilts and you feel about quilts. And Carol is a designer. I mean, she really has been a designer and an artist all her life, like most of the people in my family. But she had such a good time and was just blowing money on stuff right and left. It was really fun to watch.
Yeah, it was
Her
really
eyes would
fun.
get really big, and she'd be like, "Oh God, well, look at this!"
No, I know.
Take it easy. Take it easy. We got like
Yeah.
5 more shows to go to.
Yeah, calm it down. Well, you and I and my buddy Christine, my former business partner in Beadissimo, uh, we were there. We shopped. Thank you, Emily, for your expertise. I'm going to put it up on the screen. There's you and Danielle Wicks
Oh,
right
Danielle,
there.
what a doll, and such an accomplished beater. And
Oh my goodness.
I got to tell you, I found this new British show, and I think we should knock it off, Kate, and do it here in America. But it's called Making It at Market.
Oh, I think I've seen it, but I've not watched it.
It's really quite good, and I love that they give really nice feedback, and they're really it's not even so much that they're kind, but that they give honest feedback in a really useful way,
Right.
And they talk to people who are learning about who are craftspeople who want to move into the market of selling their work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only about 7 or 8 episodes, not very long.
Mm-hmm.
But God, it was really good, and I was immediately struck when I started watching, and I thought, Danielle has done all these great beadwork and has been so taken on by the wholesalers and made such good connections with them, and they published all of her work in books for her.
Wasn't that sweet? Wasn't that amazing? So
and I thought, they kind of stepped into this position of, we're your publisher, we're your editors, we're your, we're your house. And I thought, God, cool. It was really a cool thing. And I was so delighted to meet her. And it reminds me of you and me when we were kind of getting started and we were just finding our
feet. Yeah.
Our feet, and how our eyes were wide open. Like,
yeah, no, it was so great. This picture of you and Danielle, when you were picking out, we've got 2 new amazing seed bead lines that are coming.
Oh, I'm so excited.
She just jumped right in. We've got 13-aught Charlottes and we've got 10-aught 2-cuts, which were amazing. We also, the company that Danielle's working for and designing for, they also, you mentioned, Emily, we were leaving and we saw there was a stack of books with her designs in them. And her company wanted to give her a gift. So all of the tutorials and everything that she's done, they put them bound in these beautiful books and gave them to her. I was just like, you guys are a class act. And I said, never let go of Danielle Wicks.
No. I mean,
we were super fortunate to have her, guide us and,
she's a kindred spirit. The wholesalers too, they kind of get how we feel, but they maybe not have that real instinct for what makes a designer kind of jazzed,
Right.
and I felt like those were kind of yearbooks, and they were books that were, they only made like 10 copies or something. It's
Yeah.
very limited, extremely limited.
Yeah.
And I loved that idea that they were kind of, and it's kind of reminds me of this Making It at Market show, which it was just a really good, it's a feel good show.
Hmm.
I don't know why I watched anything but BBC at this point, because everything in there makes me feel better. The
Yes.
gardening
True.
shows, the home deck shows,
Yes.
it's why would I watch anything else now? I mean,
I listen to the shipping report. The
the
one
shipping news. Yeah.
The shipping news. I listen to the shipping news every night before I go to bed. I have
Yeah.
no idea what it means. I'm just lulled to sleep by this lovely voice telling me, York or whatever. I don't know. It's amazing. I love
Well,
it.
you've got to watch. You've got to watch. And I can't remember his last name. His first name is Marty, but he does this Friday nights. I guess the live version comes out of the gardening show. And he's just so relaxed. It's kind of Mr. Rogersy a little bit, but he's also got a little edge. And he just I'm gonna just pot this in here and just tamp it a couple of times, heal it in a couple of times.
That's so good.
His poor little shovel is kind of threadbare, and he's always like unlayering, and he's got dogs that follow him around, and it's like, oh gosh.
No, I have my BBC sounds right here on my phone so I can listen to it and you can see my favorites. Yep. The shipping forecast. It's right here, ready to go to call me. But
Right.
so speaking of Tucson, which I
Yeah.
wanted to, and then we're going to get to finishing this loom project, which is amazing.
Well,
And
two
there's a
people
lot.
already made these.
Yeah, people are just
Going crazy.
going crazy. I love it. And if you look on our Instagram account, you can see Drea's been posting them. But Tucson really is it. For those of you who have never gone, you can watch my broadcast from last week. I think it was last Thursday. And I'm sorry I couldn't jump in a little bit more and say hi. When you go live on the road, it's kind of rogue, So I sat down in my pajamas with my coffee in our darling Airbnb and I spilled the tea. I talked all about it. I talked about what to do, what not to do. I also promised that I was going to do a giveaway. So the giveaway that I'm going to do is going to be on this Free Tip Friday. And so I brought home, you know it, Emily, you and I, it's the Tucson Bible, the show guide.
I only will take the express one anymore because that weighs like 10 pounds. And I
It
know
does.
the first 2 or 3 years I went to Tucson, I religiously brought it home with me thinking I was going to need it. Never looked at it again.
No, I still have it. I mark it. I look at, so I have two of these. Two. I said I only have one, but I brought a second one. So I'm going to give two of these away on Friday.
Nice.
So it'll be like you went to Tucson. Then we also went to our buddies, TR Cast and other friends who did a wholesale only show just for vendors and retailers. And you go and you look at the new product. It's the Mojo show. It was a really small one. It really felt, Emily, like back in the day, right? There was our friends from Tierra Cast and other friends from our Beadalon friends and our Impress Art friends. They were all there and they were showing the newest things. There's a tiny tumbler that I'm really excited about, all kinds of stuff. But there's a goodie bag of stuff here. Swag. And it's good swag. It's not like, sometimes the bags are all, no, thanks. This is a good bag. So I've got these. So I'm going to give this away on Friday as well. So what's that?
You went to Beads of Courage as well. Did you get some swag from them?
We did. We went to Beads of Courage. I did not get some swag there, but our friends at Beads of Courage, it was a fun event for and a great a really great cause. Yeah, for sure. So I'll talk a little bit more. I'll do a Tucson wrap up on Friday. I'll have a few more pictures to show you folks. Gita put the live from Tucson. It's right. It's best place to find it is right on our YouTube channel. I also wanted to mention before we get any further, and then I promise Emily's going to get to finishing her piece. But I haven't. It's been like a week since I've seen. Well, not maybe a week, but less than a week. But still, I'm like, Emily, where have you been? So we had to catch up. Let me get to this. Hang on. I did want to remind everybody, of course, you can follow us on all of our social at beadshop.com, the bead table, and over on YouTube at beadshop.com. Our YouTube is growing by leaps and bounds, and it's going to be really great. Some of the fun things that we have planned to go up on YouTube for 2023. So please make me happy. Give it a like and a follow and a subscription so you know where to find all things new from Bead Shop. And also Emily's project here, we are doing the log cabin looming. You can find that piece, all of the info on it over on beadshop.com. I'm super excited. Emily's going to talk us through doing some weaving in of ends and how to finish it off. I also started my piece. I'm going to show it to you on Friday. And I'm going to talk to you folks a little bit about my inspiration for it because I was pretty excited. I took your words to heart, Emily, and looked at the world around me. And so, but I'll share that. I'll share that on Friday. So I think, people are chomping at the bit. So let me add your piece here.
So I just want to let you know, I'm not seeing real-time Facebook comments so much. So if you guys have questions, please interrupt and see. And
yeah, I have them here.
On Kate's apron, so she gets to have you ask questions.
I'll put them up. No worries. And the other thing, also, keep posting your pieces, folks. Yes. Your loom work has been just incredible. Emily, I saw that your sister was wearing her original piece, the one that you started and finished at our bead retreat, and it just looked stunning on her. I have some ideas about mine. It was where I've got my inspiration from the Desert Museum in Tucson, so it was pretty fun. So let me. What's that?
Feeling that might have happened.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. Yeah. Let's go ahead and there you are. You're up, Em. So I will let you take it away.
Well, I really was so excited to see everybody's work on Facebook and the pieces that people are working on. It does my little heart just good to see that kind of happening, coming through. So please keep posting them, and feel free, to ask questions on Facebook, which I really do like that. And you can message any one of us if you don't hear from us back. But I love answering questions where kind of everybody gets to see the answer, because I think sometimes those questions come up and you don't know who you might have helped by bringing that out.
No, 100%.
One of the things that came to me when last we met was that I would have really liked to have done this piece in black and gray. And my sister Barbara also just worked on a quilt that ended up with kind of cool colors and then a very variegated gray background. So multiple gray patterns. And so I dove into that yesterday, and I just wanted to show you what it looked like. So the same pattern. The only part that I kept red was the little center of the log cabin, because I thought that kind of gave it a little pop. And I really like how the variegations in the grays came out. So I went to my stash and I picked out 14 grays, and like the little red beads. So I was able to pick and choose a little bit amongst my gray, which is not, I don't know if I want to admit that or not, but I did pick and choose a little bit amongst my grays. And I was able to come up with a palette that I really liked. And it did have some kind of cool grays and some warmish grays in there, which I kept in. And I wanted to just show you what little system I figured out to do this with the existing pattern that I had, even though that pattern already has numbers in it. So I chose my grays, and I'll just do this quickly, and then we'll get on to the next.
Sure. And just real quick, Em, before I forget, Will you also touch on, I know you're going to touch on closing it, but will you also
Sure.
talk a little bit? I know this one doesn't have fringe,
Oh
and we
yes,
may do one in the
it's on
future
my
with
list.
fringe, but it's on your list. Great. I
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure.
absolutely.
No worries.
Oh yeah. Because I know people have been asking and talking about fringe. So
Yes, fringe,
what
fringe,
I did
fringe.
was I took my design board with a velvet pad in it, and I have some artist tape, which is kind of narrow. So this is, let me just show you what that looks like. I think I got it at Dick Blick. So it's basically a little bit stronger masking tape, but it's really narrow. So it's a quarter
Oh,
inch
yeah.
tape, right? Which I thought was handy in this case. I had it around for painting. And I just made a little grid on my work surface, and I can't
Very
really
smart.
tilt this too much, but let me tilt the camera so you can see it a little bit better.
Oh,
There we
yeah.
go.
Great. Nice.
I just made a little strips across, and actually I thought of something later that would have helped even more, but I'll tell you that in a minute. And I assigned each gray a color from the palette that we already had.
Oh, smart.
So instead of having this actually be whatever gray that is, I assigned it to the 4452.
Gotcha.
So I could use this pattern over and over with many different colors as long as I just assign those new colors to the same positions. Does that make sense? I hope.
It completely. That's really smart.
It
Because
just
then,
seemed like kind of a labor saver, you know. I could have put this in black and white as well, which would
right,
give me tones and maybe
right.
be a little less distracting. But it was really helpful to have it with be able to pick up those same colors.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. And then the work is already done, and you just have to make the leap between what the original color number was and the number you're assigning it. I think that's a great
Absolutely. I
idea.
just picked up 4452 and 4220. So that's these two guys. I needed two of those, and that meant 13 more of the black.
Right.
And so it was just easy to kind of go along. Last night when I was looking at this mess and thinking, oh God, I'm going to have to, separate all these beads out here. I should have put something in between. And what I could have done was used a bamboo skewer.
Oh, smart.
Actually make my grid so that the beads wouldn't migrate back and forth. And actually, this would be fine anytime. Kate and I looked at some new beading surfaces while we were in Tucson, and one of them actually has some little wells in it, which I think is handy.
Yeah, I like those. I think we're going to get them.
Yeah, it was very flat, which is really my preference is that I don't have to dip in to the wells too very much. I showed you my watercolor palette last time, which worked pretty well. The beauty of this is that you're not picking up too many beads at a time.
Right.
So what I lose maybe in speed, I kind of maybe gain in accuracy. And it's nice to have a place to put the mixed beads when I change out my mind and I don't want to sort them, but I can sort them eventually with just a chopstick or an awl or whatever and put them away. Okay. I made myself a new side table, Kate. You'd be very happy.
I like a side table.
These rows, again, had I added a little bamboo skewer in between, would have been much better. That would have kept everything from really migrating back and forth and be nice and low.
Yeah.
And I believe this artist tape is just going to peel right off and not
without hurting your it's nice. I kind of like, Emily, how they all kind of work together. You're kind of living on the edge there with the migrating back and forth a little, but that's me. I love this idea. I think it's really great.
It worked. I mean, I would do this again for organizing something, and having the little bamboo skewers would just give me address my little tidiness issue. But I think this worked really well, and it was super easy to put just with a Sharpie, put the number down, and I just went down the list. I did match up the colors, the grays, in tone, in value, rather than in color. So where I saw something that had a very dark, deep value, I also chose a very dark value for that bead. Something that had a lighter value ended up with a lighter value bead. So
that makes complete
colors, we're talking tone. Okay.
Right.
That's clear.
That's super clear.
Also,
and
Millie really used. Go ahead.
Oh, I want to say Millie's saying seeing your layout is key to being super organized and having an advanced plan. She's super excited to try the project. So she's really picking up what you're putting down with those.
Yeah, and I just happen to have this skinny tape, which worked exceedingly well in this position. But you could cut
Mhm.
tape or, masking tape, blue tape or whatever.
Sure.
I use a lot of blue tape in the jewelry making that I do. I know Kate does as well. I
I do
gotta
too.
say,
Yeah.
having the white was kind of nice. It
It is
didn't feel
nice. It's not as jarring.
It's not as jarring, so it was sort of useful. Okay, so I'm just going to slide this onto my side table so that I feel like a professional when I've got all these support personnel all over the place.
I know. Side tables. I love
Side
them.
tables, right? So here's my project.
Oh,
Mm,
Emily, it's so, so good.
It's real pretty. I like it a lot. I really do. I'm excited about wearing it, and I just brought in from right behind me on its little spot in the vintage section of my shelf. The vintage inspiration for this. And
Yeah.
there's a couple things here I think that are sort of interesting. We're using modern size 11 beads, and
Hmm.
I suspect that these are more like a size uh, 10
Yeah,
bead
probably.
with
Yeah.
variation. I know that I spent a lot of time individually looking at these beads, and you will too. Whatever beads you've chosen to do this with, you get very intimate with those beads and very comfortable knowing them and knowing that some are a little wider, some are a little narrower. But I got to say, this piece, this poor beater, I feel so sorry for her. I'm assuming it's a her, but gosh, the unevenness of these old beads is
Right.
it just gives me hives. Look at this. Look at this white going down the middle and how it kind of wows in and out because
Yeah.
they're all different sizes. And who knows, they might have been beating at night with not great light too. I mean, this little skinny white, why would you put that one in there? Ah! But
Well,
on the flip side, these green beads are exceedingly wide.
yeah.
So there was maybe somebody balancing, trying to balance that a little bit. These yellow beads are not so bad. The cobalt blue beads are pretty even. The turquoise blue beads are kind of a mess also. Really uneven sizes. And of course, they're using some pretty beefy thread. So I'm sure it was a super challenge. And I go down to the ends of this.
I love
And
the ends. I love, love, love the ends.
there's some weaving on the outside. It's a little messy, but the effect would have been lovely just being worn. No one's going to really grab it and look at it that closely. But this is nice that it has a kind of a self fringe, right? It has
Hmm.
this split that goes up to the split loom, and then the split continues down below, and then the fringe hanging from it. So I particularly chose not to do fringe on this particular project because I felt it didn't suit the design as much.
Hmm.
If I was going to do a fringe on this, if I had to, I probably would make a very plain, straight fringe without a taper at the bottom or without any fancy larger beads, particularly in it. It would be kind of a continuation of these beads.
Right.
But our loom beads, of course, they're horizontal, their holes are horizontal, and our fringe bead are going to have holes that go up and down, right?
Right.
So doing a fringe on this is not difficult. And I know it's kind of tempting that we have all these threads coming out between the beads, but I would not use my warp threads for fringe. I don't think it's really strong enough in over time. And if something does break, it's integral to everything else. And so it becomes a real problem.
Gotcha. So you would weave everything in and then add your fringe thread later.
Absolutely. And actually, I don't want to say time, but I want to say most of the time. That would be how I chose to proceed for fringe, is to not use an integral thread, a thread that's sort of a weight bearing or that's
Hmm.
part of the piece for a fringe or a clasp. And I can break that rule sometimes. Like I don't feel as worried about the button as I feel about the loop.
Right.
The
Right.
loop I feel is going to take more fondling, and the button is just there to be strong. And so if I can have a couple of threads go through the button that are part of the piece, I may be able to live with that.
Hmm.
But I think the loop side of a clasp, I would want to have a fresh thread. If the loop
Right.
breaks, I can fix it. But if something
Right.
breaks, in here, I'm kind of in a bad spot. I don't
Right.
have a whole lot of ability to fix that. So I would weave in new thread and then proceed to make my fringe across the piece. I've I've talked to Kate before about talking about just a fringe day, all the fringe. Because
Every
fringe is
friend.
really, it's kind of it's the icing on the cake. It's the fun part at the end, that you get to kind of embellish with. And we could do a picot edge on this all along would be a really nice addition.
It would
Um,
look nice.
there's some quilts that have kind of a sawtooth edge that
Hmm.
look really beautiful, and I think it's a great inspiration. We could do a picot, we could do a semicircle. I mean, there's a bunch of things I think we could kind of play around with. Um, so a picot would look a little bit like it was pinked with the pinking shear, a shear that
Right.
cuts a little zigzag. But I think there's some other things we could do with this too that might be really cool. So fringe, I would start with new thread, weave in all my ends, and then start with a new thread and work my way across in a fringe. And on a necklace that's long, also, kind of anything past the décolletage area that's hanging below that. Keep in mind that when you sit down at a table, you lean over and it bashes into the table, and that it gets caught in coats and scarves, things like that. I would want to keep my fringe kind of in mind of how I'm going to be wearing this piece. If this piece is just sparkle time, everything sparkle, and I'm going to wear it only at one night, and I'm going to be very careful while I'm wearing it, then you have one situation. But if it's something that's going to be more an everyday piece that might get more office wear or coats on, coats off, and handled a bunch more, then you may want to consider keeping that fringe kind of in the smaller size, shorter
Hmm.
length, but simple and simpler,
Hmm.
just as a design and functionality aspect. I did think that maybe later this year we would work on another split loom piece with maybe some other designs, and play around with this design, because I don't want you to think that you bought that Ojibwa loom just for one piece.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I'm ready to make that piece,
cool.
Emily. I
And
just love it.
we also made this piece all in one go, which really with loom is something you don't have to do.
Right.
I did appreciate that. I felt this was very simple to do all in one go. It is about the minimum for weaving in threads and having to do the kind of not so fun part. The minimum that we could possibly do. But if you had a shorter loom or you were weaving in pieces for whatever reason, you could actually weave just the pendant and then a strap, one piece or strap, and join them up. Absolutely no reason why you can't do that.
Right.
So this could be a modular piece that you made. You could even make the pendant and say, you know what, this is a bracelet for me. I'm going to make this into a bracelet. It's not. I'm not seeing the. Not seeing.
Yeah, I actually thought about that for my loomed piece, Em. I was like, maybe it'll be a bracelet, but I think I'm going to persevere.
Well, and
There's
I
a,
think with the next one, I'd love to do beaded warps with you as well, because
yeah,
I think
that's going to be super fun.
that's a kind of a next level piece, and it does give you some options. So a beaded warp would be that before we begin to loom, we actually have some beads on our warp threads. So we're thinking way ahead,
Right.
and then we're weaving in sections to accommodate those beaded warps and give us another density. So it would be lighter, more flexible at that point, but give us some fun kind of options to play around with.
Yeah, and let me ask you this question real quick.
Sure.
Rona has a question. For that particular piece, if you were going to add some fringe and some picot to that one that we did, the one that you designed, what colors would you pull out of the piece? Would you make that fringe and picot kind of monochromatic, or would you add some color? What's your thought on that?
I think if I was going to do the fringe, I would probably keep the fringe in the same colors that we made already. So I might play around with either reproducing, reproducing that portion of it. Trying to get it. It's too dark.
Oh, in the fringe.
In the fringe. So I might take a
Sure.
section of it and actually string it in this reproduction. Now, what that's going to do is give me some dangle and some movement in my piece. So a little bit of dynamism added in, but keeping the same color scheme kind of makes everybody relate to one another.
Right.
You could also, and I think this would be another way to go, would be to do, picking these colors, do a couple yellow, a couple green, a couple blue, a couple red, a couple orange, a couple blue, and have it be in a stack. So it's really
Right.
related, but it's not a reproduction necessarily.
Right. That
Um,
makes sense.
I think I would reproduce it for me. That would be
Mhm.
my choice. And picos down the edge. I think I would do. I would be really tempted to do red because
Yeah,
I
I would,
would
because
just.
red is this your center square.
So it would really make it pop. And I
Yes.
I have to tell you that I had to talk very sternly to myself when I was picking out the colors for these beads, because the first two beads I picked out were black and white and red, and I went, oh, okay, I can't do that. Kate's going to kill me. And Janice, could you pick some other colors? So I would be very tempting to do it in black and white,
Right.
give it a little bit of a kind of a Harlequin feel, because this does have kind of that Harlequin-esque to it.
Hmm.
A black and white. Also, Kate and I just came back from Tucson, so I'm very influenced by what I saw in Tucson. It does
Yes,
have a little bit of a tribal feel.
it
And
does.
the black and white would be very dynamic, which is what we see in a lot of tribal jewelry or jewelry made in Africa, and Native American jewelry tends to have a lot of primary colors and a lot of vibrancy to it. When you look at things that have that palette to it, it's what is appealing to a different cultural eye and what's appealing to a different cultural norm. So when I love to look at the clothing and the African clothing, and it's vivid green and vivid blue and vivid purple,
Yeah.
all in one pattern, and you're like, wow, that's a lot. And it's a big dress, and you're like, wow, that's a lot. So it's just what you're particularly used to seeing. And I tend to like a lot of color. If you were to look around my home, you'd find very colorful rugs, very colorful paintings, quilts and pillows layered on one another that don't match.
Yeah.
Well, to me, they match.
Yeah. No,
And
I
so
agree.
they
I
have
love color.
I like a lot of texture, and I like a lot of layering. And so that's kind of my personal eye that kind of goes that way. To me also, and this was another thing I really tried to do, was not to pick direct primary saturated opaques for this. I did want to have some other colors in there because there are other colors that I love.
Right.
Even though this was kind of representing fabrics, the other thought I had was quilts are originally the way that we as a culture, as humans, made our scraps of fabric or leftover fabric or damaged fabrics go farther and go again around our lives. Worn out
Mhm.
pants become rugs, and worn out dresses become cut down for the littler girls, and then there's scraps left over, and those end up in the quilts. So I would love to find a satin in these colors and have it be in a quilt, because it's shiny and it's smooth, and it's a contrast to that matte velveteen in pink that's sort of faded from the sun. And so it's not really a garment anymore, but it's going to be in the quilt. So to me, this is really all my colors and my textures kind of mixed together. And I really like that.
Yeah.
So my short story.
Yeah. Good one. I
Right?
think, yeah, I just think this project, it's open to a lot of interpretation, and I'm going to share some of that on Friday as well, what I saw and what I used in my piece. So when you took this off the loom, Emily, let's
Yes.
just start with, could you measure that piece for us? Just let's start off there. Let's take a look at some measurements, and then I'd like you to talk about, because I made this mistake when I was warping mine. And so I started to weave it, and then I realized that I didn't have an odd number. I didn't have a center. I had an even number. I had 30
okay.
beads going across.
You can have an even number. That's fine.
Yeah, but with the design that I was doing, it needed a center. So so I went back, I actually put another warp on and I wove a little edge. And so now you can't see it. But
Okay.
yeah, if you would just walk us through that. And there's another question here that says my beads shift when the project is done. What's the best way for them not to move or drop? So if you could kind of talk us
Yeah.
through when you
I will
actually
happily do that.
drop.
There are a couple of things that can happen with loom weaving, which really are you'll get better at having that not be a problem as you go along. It's not uncommon, and this is a big project. If you've never loomed before, this is a big project because it's got many technical aspects to it that you wouldn't probably have to worry about with a bracelet.
Right.
So first off, door to door, right now, I'm at 15 inches from the bottom of the pendant to the top of the necklace,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the pendant is about 2.5 inches long. So if I move up to here, I got about 12.5. So when I loop this together like that, it's going to fit over my head. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be about 20. And that's what you're doing this one specifically with no
Clasp.
clasp, correct?
We could totally do a clasp on this one, just like you
Right.
would do a bracelet, a button
Right.
and a loop or glue on clasp or, kind of whatever. Let me, before I move on to this, let me go and talk about that dropping problem. And I
Sure.
think I know what, is it Nancy who asked that question?
I'll look back. It's Des0021.
Okay.
So it's Des
Maybe
who
it's
has that
Des.
question.
Hold on, I'm going to move my camera just a tiny bit to get a little bit better zoom. And can I zoom in a little bit? Does that work?
No, you can't
Oh,
actually zoom, but you could push your camera closer.
got it.
But
Okay. I had to try that for myself because,
yeah.
I'm stubborn like that. So let me just move my camera in a little bit more.
There we go. That's a pretty good view, Emily, if
Is
you
that
can work with
sharp
it.
enough?
Yeah, it's nice and sharp.
Okay. All right. Let me get some beads. That's the next job. I tucked my needle in there just to keep it away from getting lost. And I'm just going to grab some beads here. I'm not going to worry about the color because I want to show you something else that I should have showed you last week and I didn't, but some of you might already know this already. This trick.
I like a trick too.
Oh, who doesn't love a seed beading trick? Come on
I
now.
like a good trick.
Right? So I finished this last row and my warp thread's coming, or my weaver thread's coming out to the left and it's on top of the warps. I want to do one more thing. I want to put this back here. Oh, that's not the right color. Hold that thought. Let me find something with a little bit of, I want a little bit of a background that's not, no, that's not good.
Nice.
Hold on one second.
Mhm.
I got something here.
As Emily's looking.
As I'm digging down underneath my chair to see if
That's
there's
right.
anything down there that'll work. Just wanted to do something where the threads were a little bit more visible.
Oh yeah, there we go. That'll work out.
Right? Because who doesn't love a divider and a binder?
That's right. And Em, I'm going to step away for just a second. I've got to grab something for this project, but I'll be right back. So
I'm
if I
actually
don't
going to
respond,
slide this underneath the loom.
yeah,
So
that looks good.
kind of what this does is it gives you a little bit better view of just the threads that we're working with. Behind this blue curtain is the warp threads going up the back of the loom, right? And so sometimes it's a little hard for us to show you things without making it perfectly visible. So I'm going to grab up some beads on my needle, and this is just a temporary row. Sometimes bead weavers call this a dummy row, a row that's not going to really exist. I'm going to use it only for demonstration or for some purpose like setting the warp width on my piece. And it doesn't really have any purpose at this point. It's just a row of beads that are going to show us how to do this. On this black and white one, I also chose to stay with the white thread, or the black and gray one. I could have used black thread. That would have been another option, or a dark gray thread. But I felt like those transparent beads were so transparent that I wanted to keep them kind of bright and white. So when I weave, I bring my thread behind the warps, and all I need to do is push up with my finger my beads to pop in between every warp thread. Now, if this isn't happening for you easily, it may be that your warp is too loose and that you need to tighten the tension up a little bit. If it happens with almost audible pop, pushing that guy up and it goes tink, 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 your warp thread actually might be a little bit tight. So that too tight warp will give you wrinkles afterwards, and your too loose warp may make things be kind of sloppy and loose. So once my beads are pushed up against my warp thread, I'm going to use a little bit of tension with my finger, and I think you'll be able to see this on the screen. What I'm looking for is the gleam of the needle going in between the beads. I hope you guys can see that, because
and it's pretty close in, but I did notice that when I was doing mine,
right?
I could see the needle.
So once you see that needle go through, you're 100% sure that you've got the weaving thread on the top and the bottom of the warps, okay? And that's what holds everything in place. Then I'm going to pull my needle through. Now, as far as tension here, I actually just like to give it a little bit of a tug. And you can see this last thread move just a little bit, but everything else is just kind of even. So tension for bead weaving, there are times you need extra tight tension to kind of hold a form like right angle weave. And you achieve that by tugging, but you also achieve it by filling the holes with thread so that they're firm. And we did that on the last little lace net kind of piece that I did, the little earrings. Again, filling the holes with thread kind of gives you more tension. So if you feel like your pieces are too loose, you can actually move up to a bulkier thread, or you can double your thread. And doubling your thread will give you more tension, but it makes your work a little harder. So if you pierce a thread or anything like that, or get a knot, you may have much more difficulty with double thread. Ask me how I know. Okay? So I'm ready to do that next row, but I know that this row is a dummy row. It's going to go away. So here's how I'm going to undo it. I'm going to take the right hand warp thread, and I'm just going to pull it to the side. So see this little loop that opened up? I don't know if you've ever showed this, Kate, before.
No, but that's a good way.
This is how I get rid of that strand.
Right.
And I'm going to unthread my needle. The amount of time it takes me to rethread my needle is much shorter than the time it takes to untangle that thread.
That is correct.
Pull it back, and now I can just slide those beads off. Okay. So I'm not going to take them off because I'm going to show you what it looks like when you don't get all the warps sandwiched between. Hold on one second. Back to get my needle threaded on again. So let's say you get your beads back here, and you go along, and some of your beads drop down. So you may see that happen, where your thread is going to be atop the beads. You might even have this happen, where your thread goes through the beads, but they're actually below the warp. So these beads are not sandwiched. They're not correct. Okay. And having them dangle down or having them be loose is kind of that recipe for a mistake. So just focus on getting them pushed up. And remember, what we're really looking for is the gleam of the needle going through the beads. And I'm actually angling up with my needle. So my needle's going across, but the tip of my needle is up considerably from my work. So
that makes sense.
Looking to hit the inner upper tunnel of the bead, right?
And Emily, let me ask, if you are doing that and you weave a few rows and you notice that you've missed a bead or your thread is out of order, when how do I want to ask this? when do you decide to just weave it in and fix it
Right.
versus taking rows out back to your mistake?
Well, this is kind of a personal question.
It is. It is. This gets into the,
I would say if I was within several rows, I
yeah,
would probably go back.
you pick it out. Yeah, I would too.
If it was really long time gone, I'll tell you, here's a mistake that I make more occasionally than I do dropping the bead below, is I will be sloppy about paying attention to what I'm doing, and I will actually miss this bead at the end.
That's what I do too. I do that
And
too.
something weird will happen, and it's like, what the heck is going on back there? And I'm like, oh.
And it's nested on the end, right? And not in the
And it's like,
channel.
oh my goodness. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. I just pull it out. You know, no big, no big. Not gonna hurt myself over that one. You know, it's all right. All
Then
right.
push it back in, get it back in its lane.
Get your
Yeah.
needle back on your thread. Back you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
pretty simple.
yeah, it is possible though, like if you're weaving in ends and you miss something and you have to secure it, you can just go back in and secure it later
Yes, of course.
by weaving it in. And it will hardly be noticed. As my grand would say, it won't be noticed on a trotting horse.
Right.
So,
Yes, on a galloping horse.
yes.
On a galloping horse. Okay, let me move this out of the way and talk for just a minute about.
That was really great, Emily. That was really,
that helpful?
I think that was very helpful. Yes.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you.
I mean, I think that's the kind of stuff that happens to us all,
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't, lose sleep over it or anything like that. I do think if, speaking of losing sleep, if you are struggling with your work at night because lighting and because tired and because of whatever, take a break, put it aside, go to bed, get up, fresh eyes tomorrow morning, or whatever. Take a little breather. If you feel like you're getting frustrated and you're struggling with keeping things in line and it's like you're rubbing your head and patting your tummy. If you're feeling like that, just take a break and come back to it. You'll be happier later that you did.
Mm-hmm.
This is a bit of a time-consuming project. I don't think it's very difficult, but I think it is one that requires a little bit more commitment. If you decide that the long necklace is not your jam, and you say, I want half that pendant, and I want a necklace that fits right around my neck so the pendant lays right in my collar line, it would be just absolutely fine to finish this off and make a loop and add a button with a bead on the other
Mm-hmm.
side, or a glue in or pinch on bail. Any of those things would be 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
And Emily, I'm going to say real quick, Des is going to send a photo of her piece. And I
Okay.
told her to email it right to info@beadshop.com. And Des, address it to Emily, and Drea will forward it on to Emily. And then we can really drill down to exactly your issue. Not a problem at
And
all.
if you want to post it, Des, if you want to post it on the Facebook group,
Yeah, the bead shop bead table. Yeah.
it's really nice to have, because you're not just getting help for yourself, you are getting help for someone else who you just don't even know that's struggling with that or will struggle with it tomorrow, and you're going to save them. So I love seeing stuff on the Facebook group, and I'm happy to help you there, and by email, your choice. But
yeah. And just tag, if you put it on the Facebook group, just tag whoever you want, Emily or me or Janice or whoever, so we all see it.
Yeah. Because we want to help you, and we want to make sure you get your questions answered. But having that resource there for you and for others is really a nice thing. And the more we can do it, the better. Okay, so here's the fun part where I'm going to show you all my mistakes.
Yay!
Actually, when I finished this pendant and I had this already off the loom, I had missed a bead. I think it was there. No, it was in the strap, the first row of this pink section. I had missed that bead. So that one's actually added in later. And you can kind of see here with our superhuman eyes, you can kind of see here that there's a little bit of thread coming out from right here, right? So I had actually missed that bead, and I can't remember if it shows on the photo in the handout because I think it got that far without me seeing it. Um, but I had actually missed that bead, and I had to go in and fix it. So no one knows. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, but I will. And so I fixed it by weaving in a new thread and just going right to town by fixing it. So no big deal, right? I also just started weaving in some more of these warp threads at the base on the pendant. And one of my little tag ends is kind of poking out here. That's super frustrating. Not
I get those. I get those too.
Yeah. So when you weave in your warp threads, I like to cut it under a little tension. But I also recommend not having your thread end at an edge. And just for continuity's sake, the fewer threads you can kind of wrap around the edge, the neater this looks. So a couple of warp threads, you don't have anywhere to go with them. So you have to go around the edge. But I would just in general do as few to the edge as you can possibly manage. And that keeps that edge looking really clean and tidy. Okay. You can see right here where I actually brought a couple threads up that same pathway. And that will push the beads apart a little bit. I can fix that as I go along, but the other side looks really great. So I don't have to worry too much, okay? To cut off this little thread, there's a couple of choices. I can actually use a thread burner on it, which is one great way to go. Or if you don't happen to have a thread burner, thread burners are great. I'm gonna use my knotting tweezers. You could use a pair of pliers here too. A small pair of jewelry making pliers. And I'm going to use it to hang on to that thread so that I can cut it closer and get rid of it. I mean, I cut off, I don't know, 4 millimeters of thread there. But those little tweezers really help a lot with helping you get rid of things that you can't quite grasp with your fingers, right? So when I weave in warp threads, and this has a little bit of time commitment to it as well. And it's kind of the not so fun part of weaving because it's inevitable. There's just no way you can get around it. I'm going to weave in these ends by putting each one of these threads on a needle. And then I'm going to weave it into the pendant. And I'm going to take 2 different pathways to this. Some pathways, and I like to alternate both sides. So I work one from here, working towards the middle. And I also like to alternate pathways. So pathways might be, here's a little bit of graph paper, my friend, the graph paper, and a pen. So if I'm weaving in a thread, I might go through long pathways like this, through the beads, or I might do short pathways. And so ultimately, this whole pendant is going to have these kind of going everywhere. They're going to overlap one another, and they're going to be in there. So I like to alternate those pathways. My goal is to fill up the holes as irregularly as possible. So it doesn't make it too stiff, nor does it push the beads apart and make the width of the pendant visibly different than the rest of it, okay? So I very simply thread a needle with every warp thread. And I'll do 1 or 2 here for you. This is a little bit like watching paint dry if you're not actually here with me chatting it up. It's not the most thrilling part of the fun that we already had. So remember that needles have 2 different sides to them. I think we've talked about that before. When a needle is made, a commercial beading needle or sewing needle is made, they actually take a piece of wire and a hammer comes down and flattens it at that little end, a little bit. And then a punch comes in and punches out the eye, right? It goes right through, knocks out a piece of the eye. And then they cut them in half. So it's a long piece. So the eye on one side, we're looking at the eye of the needle. On one side, the punches come in and punched out a piece. On the other side, it's probably a little narrower, okay? So where the piece came out is the smaller side. Where the punch went in to the metal, it was a little bit wider. So needles literally have a side to them. So if you're having trouble threading one side, try flipping the needle over.
Yeah, and I cannot tell you how true that is, Emily. It
Well, and
really, it makes a difference.
if you happen to have a little microscope at home and you were to look at them, you'd see it. It's
Yeah.
not, it's past the naked eye probably, but I also have found over time that you can actually wet the thread and wet the needle. So it's a little different when you sew. You kind of you might wet the thread to keep the fibers together. But with this fine thread and this fine needle, these threads are polyester. They're not really getting wet. They're just getting a coating on the surface. And wetting the needle kind of it gives you a little bit of lubrication on both sides.
Right.
And so it does sometimes help the needle slip onto the thread. Plus side of doing this particular technique is you'll get really good at threading needles. And so
You will.
if you struggled with it before, you will not struggle with it anymore after this, because you have threaded your needle 16 times at the pendant and another 16 times up here at the piece. So you've done 32 needle threadings in the time it takes you to finish this piece. You're happier than you've ever been. Trust me.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true.
So I'm going to take each one of these threads, and these threads are caught in between. These are the warp threads. They're caught in between the weavers, right? There's a weaver on top of it and a weaver on the bottom of it. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to just go right in next to where that thread comes out. This will be a short pass. So here's one change of direction. All right? 2 changes of direction. 3 changes of direction. So that was 1, 2, here's the third one. About 3 is sufficient. Mm-hmm. I often will do kind of one more, and I might do an overlap going back this direction.
That's what I do usually. But that changing direction, that's really key here, Emily.
Yeah.
If you folks, when you're doing this, make sure you just do that little meander and your threads will be.
You're fine.
You'll be in.
Yeah. Okay. So then I just get close with the scissor and I pull on the thread a bit and clip it off. Okay. And if you have cats and dogs at home, make a special pile of thread. You don't want them eating it.
No, you do not.
Right? That's an expensive thing to have happen. It's sad all around. It leads to time in the cone, and no one wants that.
No.
Okay, so here, let's do a longer one on this one. So I'm going to go across a few more beads. So when we're working with Japanese beads, we should have plenty of thread room in the holes for these threads. Check beads will have smaller holes, and we're going to get into check beads soon.
Yes, because we have them coming.
We've got those Charlottes coming, and let me tell you what, this particular project done in those Charlottes
is going to be off the heddle, as I like to say.
Oh my goodness, amazing. Oh my goodness, amazing.
Yeah.
So do you guys know what Charlotte beads are? I don't know if you've ever heard them before. It's my mom's name, so I always like calling them Charlottes. So Charlottes are a particular type of bead. It's a seed bead, a round seed bead, just like these are, but they have one small facet round on them.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't even know what it takes to make a Charlotte, but
no.
Golly, can you imagine the tooling?
Yeah.
Jeez.
And they have such a vintage flair to them. And they say that Charlotte's, though we call Charlotte's sizes a lot different. When we were talking to our seed bead rep, traditionally Charlotte's are 13-aught.
So I've gotten to a point where I can't go back into those beads. It's too full. So I'm going to go back to these pink ones and go across. Now, sometimes you'll see a little bit of thread here popping out, and that's okay. You can pull your thread up a little bit tighter. Try doing a little fold and roll. Sometimes that kind of brings the bead back to not so much a showing of a thread. Okay, so let's cut this off, and I'm going to go up to the top to start working on the connection here. I would, if it were me at your side and you were saying, okay, I'm ready to join up the necklace, I would actually tell you to finish the pendant first. And I gotta say that the reason I would say that is I want less tangling when I'm working up here. So I want to make sure that what I do is smooth and sleek and is exactly right the first time without having to undo or redo anything. Okay. I went in and wove in about half my threads. We need about half the threads to make this join happen. We don't really need them all. And if we do it with all the threads, weave in all the threads as the join, it's going to push those beads apart a little bit and make it a little bit bulky. So I've reduced down to 4 and 4. So I wove in 4 and I just skipped threads, right? Just made it opposite. So when this is going to connect, it's going to connect like this. So I used opposite thread, the opposite pattern to make sure that I had actually the same pattern, but it comes out being opposite, right? I carefully chose the ones I wanted to weave in. So let's get a needle on a thread. I'm going to take this one from the edge. I do like alternating edges to going back and forth edge to edge. I just think it kind of makes that happen a little bit more smoothly. And now I know, huh?
And on this portion, Emily, you want to make sure that those straps are not twisted.
Oh, Kate, you read my mind.
Yes.
I'm actually going to check myself a couple times before I do this.
Because that's what I would do, 100%.
And I was just thinking, we could probably put this on a little bit of masking tape. So we could probably put a little bit of masking tape behind this to kind of hold it in place while we got started. But there are going to be it's going to be a little messy. Life's going to be a little messy here for a minute while I get this sort of under control. But it's not going to take very long. I'm kind of excited, I have to tell you.
It looks great.
Let me just get these threads under control here, and then I will get back in the frame. Am I close enough and focused enough for everybody?
Yeah, it looks good. And then, Emily, could I also ask, when we go back to the bottom, will you just pretend that one of those warp threads at the bottom is going to be a fringe thread so you can actually string it for us?
Okay. Sure. Well, actually, I would rather put in a new thread.
Okay. Okay. If you would, that would be great. Sure. We've got time.
Yeah. So I've got an edge over here, and I'm going to go into the edge on the second side. So this is the right-hand side. This is the left-hand side. And I'm just going to go in a couple beads. And I did I can see where I did a weave in from before. So this is going to give me a short pattern, which means I'm going to go back and forth a couple times. I feel like I'm in the dark here. Can you see okay?
Yeah, and we can, you could if you can get the camera just a hair closer, but I know, or your hands up a little bit more, but
there's easier if I don't move my hands.
That's better. That's better.
Bit of something to balance on. So
yeah, great. Right? Thank you, Em.
Of course. Oh, and of course I bumped it, so it's vibrating like. There we go. Right along there.
So you're not adding any extra beads or anything. You're just weaving it off.
Yep. This is just what I did at the other end.
Mm-hmm.
Except this time I'm bridging the gap between the two straps.
And this is how, Emily, if you wove your piece in sections,
yes,
the strap, the center, whatever, this is how you'd connect them.
Yep, exactly so. Mm-hmm. Loom is nice because it's, peyote, loom, brick, right angle weave. We can do that with any of these pieces. If we made peyote stitch sections and wove them together, we could do that with any of these.
Right.
Fun, right? Got a pile of threads over there on the edge there. Okay. So I'm going to go to the other strap. That's this guy. Grab that edge one. And getting these two sides in will really allow me to have a little bit of stability. Ooh, I did that one on the camera, Kate. I was only watching through the camera.
I know. Nice, Emily.
Cha.
Practiced.
Can't believe it. Right.
And so as you're weaving, remember Emily said doing those short rows and those long rows, you're just trying to avoid where you've woven in previously so that things won't bunch up too much. Sometimes you can't, and you kind of have to do that, but you can kind of get away from that section pretty quickly. See how Emily's going all the way over the edge there and then coming back. So, your thread path is going to be unique, and it's going to be informed by how you've woven the threads in previously.
I just broke a needle.
Oh,
that doesn't happen terribly often.
No, it doesn't. But not to fret. See how Emily just grabbed it with the pliers?
You have to use a tool to grab a needle. Make sure that you don't pull this way. You want to pull perfectly in line with the holes of the beads. It's not terribly unusual that you have to do that. It does happen occasionally. It's pretty unusual that I break a needle. I have a depository for dead needles.
Mm-hmm.
Little pill container. So when this is full of dead needles, I'll put some tape around it and put it in the trash. I definitely like to make sure my needles don't get up in my dogs in any way, and they're little scoundrels, so I would be not surprised make something happen like that, but I want to make sure that they're not going to get into those needles themselves. So
that's a good tip, to have a little pill jar.
Yeah, and it can be any little container. I mean, that happens to be the ones that I kind of get a hold of, but any little container with a nice sturdy lid on it that you can put on. I've got a loose thread right here. I'm really unhappy about it. That's what I don't want to have happen. Right there.
Right, I see that.
I'm going to deal with it in just a second. Well, I feel like I'm learning to stay on camera, Kate.
Well, Emily, practice makes perfect.
Finally, right? You guys have been, I know, when I watch and I'm not on screen and I'm like, oh, camera, she's off the camera. Hold on.
I know, it makes me crazy too. But
all right, I'm going to do a little thread burner on this one.
Okay.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm not going to do a thread burner. Let me show you a trick. I'm going to roll up my sleeves a little bit here.
All right, do it.
Because this is a fun trick. And if you can make this happen when you have a little problem like this.
Pull it a little further down, speaking of camera angle. There you go, perf.
If you can make this happen when you have had a little problem like this, you will be so very happy with yourself. I promise. And it's a neat little disappearing trick. So I'm going to put my needle in the work first. And pardon me while I get a little spit on my fingers. Let's kind of get those threads together a little bit. And I'm going to thread the needle while it's in the work.
Right, and then use that to pull right through.
Yeah. So one of the benefits to these fiber threads, so we use different types of thread, right? We use threads like Nymo and Eslon and Ceylon. These are flat filament threads, so a little bit like dental floss, right? Once you get one couple little threads through the eye of the needle, the rest should go along with it. So once I've got it in there, let's make it disappear.
Yeah, nice.
Gone with the wind.
Yes, nice.
I've got one little fiber sticking out. I'm just going to clip him. You guys might not be able to see that on camera, but I can see it. So now I have these threads to weave back in. And I'm going to do just the same over and over again, going back and forth, alternating sides, pulling this together so that it's absolutely seamless. Okay? Pretty simple.
Nice.
Right? So you wanted me to go back to the beginning.
Yeah. Would you talk about how we would what a piece of fringe would actually look like, Em?
Sure, absolutely.
Where it would start and where it would finish. We'll finish up with that.
Yep. I'm going to grab a new piece of thread. This is one of the leftover of my Eslon spool, my Ceylon spool, Kate, from this
Nice.
project, right?
All right. Not too bad.
I used up some thread.
Yeah.
I talked at length. I emailed with somebody last week or this week about thread, and I talk about this yard and a half of thread pretty often in seed beading,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it bears repeating that I tend to give that number, and of course your mileage may vary. You can change it if you want. I tend to give that number because I find it's a kind of a good length of thread that doesn't tangle, doesn't get caught in stuff too often, and it allows you to bead for a while. With crochet, I generally don't cut the thread. I bead from the spool. So it's a little bit different. And that yard and a half length might vary a little bit person to person. You might just be fine with like 3 yards of thread and just go to town and never have a tangle. Myself, not so much. So a yard and a half of thread gives me just a lot of time to bead, but it also doesn't get me into tangles. I think spending time untying tangles is boring. And so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to bring in a new thread, and in the same spirit of not ending a thread at the edge, I'm not going to begin a thread at the edge either, because it's going to be this little that sticks out. I don't have a better word for it than to say a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to weave in a thread, and I started really high. That's all right. So this is a place where you don't need to waste very much thread. I can pull that thread quite far down, just enough to kind of grab it and clip it off later. But I'm going to go ahead and weave in a thread and have it come down and out in between the beads. Okay? So I'm going to avoid the edge, as we've said before. I think it's a good plan. When you're adding a new thread to your work, you can test that you've got it secured by doing what you think is good enough. And then if you pull on it and this guy's still moving, then you may want to add another go again, make another stitch, another thread change, or back and overlap. So I think one of the things that I would be doing if I was going to put fringe on this is I would kind of, with my third eye, my brain eye, I would be remembering where I wanted my new thread to exit, to come out. And to do that, it's going to mean that I'm going to need to be in between 2 beads. So you know this 15 bead pattern is not going to give us a center point. Right? We'd have to use an even number. So Kate, you're set up for that to happen. Oh, there's that tight spot again. That's okay. I forgot that was there. Went through those blue beads too many now. So I am going to use the edge. I'm going to go right
like with brick stitch. Yeah.
Yep.
And Emily, while you're doing that, today is the Festival of Broken Needles in Japan.
What?
So Michelle said it's the Festival of Broken Needles, and my mom followed up by saying Hari Kiyo is the festival day to honor broken needles and bent pins. And actually February 8th, so it's today is the 8th. Right. So it is today.
Well, I guess I don't know if that makes me lucky or unlucky or something.
I love it.
Yeah. So here's my new thread going to emerge between the last 2 beads, ready for a fringe.
And so once that fringe is in, that thread is in the right spot, you won't add a new thread for each leg of fringe. You'll just keep going across, right?
Yeah. And it's going to actually go back into that same bead and loop over to the next guy, right? So I grabbed some beads on the needle here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could do as long a fringe as you wanted. I think I would be in the neighborhood of half this pendant or so.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You know, your beader's choice here, right? Skip the last bead on the strand, back up.
You could picot that bottom too.
You could have a new Miyuki drop at the bottom.
A drop, right?
Look real pretty. But I think that kind of straight fringe is kind of where I'm at for this piece, just
Yeah.
stylistically. Um, and I think if I was going to do it, I would do it in these colors. I think that would be my jam.
Mhm.
You
And
know?
so you'll just go across up and down, just like we did with the earring fringe, any of that. It's
Yeah,
all the same,
absolutely.
really.
Same. Yep.
Fringe is fringe.
Fringe is fringe, and it's really the frosting on the cake for sure. You know,
Mhm.
I could actually see doing just a delicate drop right along the bottom here.
Mhm. That'd be real pretty.
In black and white might be real pretty, you know.
Mhm.
But I like the idea of the black and white picot, maybe a
Sure. I
black.
think the Pico would look really,
It would look cool.
it would look cool, and it would add to my eye a little bit. Whenever there's a Pico, I go straight to a kind of a vintage feel.
Yeah. Well, and we look thread along the side, and think, I don't love looking at all that thread, but the picot would hide all that, so would leave
Mhm.
us with plenty of room to work.
Well, great. Well, I think, this is in pretty good shape. I'm gonna put all of us back on
Cool.
the camera here, if you're ready.
Yeah. I was just going to push that one down so it's not under my chin.
There we are. Perfect. Well, while you were doing that, I was working on my temperature project.
Oh, cool.
I'm caught up through yesterday, so here's my
Nice.
color band. February has started.
So
So
measure
it's
that, Kate. I want you to measure that length.
it's January was 9.5 inches.
Wow.
So this is going to be, and some of you have seen it. I've worn it. Emily made me an epic 50th birthday crocheted rope that I wrap around. I can wrap around like 3 or 4 times. It's amazing. So this is going to be another
It's going to
epic
be
one.
longer than that. It's going to be 108 inches,
It's
118 inches. It's going to be
it's
super long.
it's going to be crazy. I can't wait. Two things. One, I guess I'm not afraid of braiding or making a big long thing. Back in Gilroy, I grew up next to a literal garlic field, and we could go and pick the garlic after they harvested. So my we'd get it and we would braid the garlic, and she would make a braid. I don't know how long it was. I've got a picture of her holding it. Um, and then she'd put it in the rafters of the barn, and we'd go and get the garlic. So this is kind of like, well, if it's going to be 108 inches or whatever it's going to be, more power to me. So yes.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm a little behind. I'm about a week behind on mine. I didn't take it with me to Tucson.
No, I didn't
And
either.
I was I've only been home for 2 days. I had to go
Yeah.
pick up the dogs at camp, and then kind of get home and go, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I just drove from Tucson and then drove there and drove home and flew home. And
That's right.
what day is it again?
Right. What day is it? We have no idea. But I cannot wait to see everybody's really amazing pieces that they've created. Do share them. And I put it up on the Facebook group, but let me put this back up here and say you can join us. I went in and I accepted all of the pending requests. So we are up to date as of this very moment, but I check them all the time. So if you have a pending request, just hang in there and I'll get you. You can find us on Instagram at beadshop.com. Drea did a great Instagram of Emily's original piece and how Harry Styles walked the Grammy red carpet in a Harlequin jumpsuit made of Swarovski crystals that I am sure he took inspiration from your piece, Emily. So that's on our Instagram. You can see it. You can join us over at the Bead Table, as I said, on Facebook, and hit that like and subscribe button at beadshop.com on YouTube. And today was part 2 of our loomed piece with Emily. Log Cabin is the name of the piece, and you folks are just really doing it justice. I can't wait to see. And I'll share mine with you all on Friday and talk a little bit about inspiration and stuff because I was super inspired. One more thing before we go. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Tucson on Friday, and I'm going to do a project. It's called Sweater Weather, the one that Drea did, and I'm going to do literally a new twist on it. We're going to have the giveaways for the Tucson swag bag and the Tucson guide. I'm going to do that on Friday. But I did want to say we had a lot of fun. It felt really good to be back in Tucson, Emily, with you, and we just bought the pearls. I'm telling you, my gas mileage went down driving home. I had so many pearls for you folks. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it was an epic, and it was great to see and people again, and give hugs and all that stuff. And Tucson has not changed an iota. It's all the same. Although they finally, I don't know how many years it took them to do this, but to finish the trolley system downtown and the freeway.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I can't deal with this construction situation not one more minute. So I was super happy. And it was lovely I went to a couple of new restaurants. Actually, did I go to any new restaurants?
I went. Yeah. I went to an amazing.
I know. I didn't see that one until we had already gone to dinner, and we went to.
I'll share it with you on Friday. Yeah,
Cafe at Congress was off the chain, and
it's really good.
Music. Now outside out back, it used to be a parking lot. They've turned it into like a stage.
Oh, super fun!
Yeah, it was fun. Really cool. People were lining up for it, and it was really
that's
neat.
Great.
Yeah, it was good.
Great.
Guadalajara. Yeah.
Right. Guadalajara, yum. The food is amazing in Tucson. It is a U.S. heritage food site because we have so much great food there in Tucson. Yeah, also, to let you folks know, the Friday broadcast and the Wednesday broadcasts are always at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. Don't forget, folks, to sign up for the newsletter. That's how Drea communicates, how we all do, but Drea does a great job with it. Communicates all of the information, not only on the project and the products from today's broadcast, but the newsletter also talks about any discounts or giveaways or things that are coming down the pike, new releases for product. It was Emily helped me buy some amazing silver, some sterling silver. We're going to roll out sterling silver like it's 1997 in the bead world. I'm telling you, it's not even funny. So, Emily, thank you so much. It was a great post-Tucson wrap-up. I cannot wait to share my looming project, but it was such an inspiration, this project. I can't wait to see where we go with it.
Yeah, I think it's a really great jumping off point for some other loom things. I'd like to do the split loom with the beaded warps.
Yes.
That's really kind of a fun one, and maybe we'll take some inspiration from something different this time.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, I've got a couple thoughts.
Well, you will be back soon. We picked out some cool pearls and some things. So we've got some projects from Emily coming down the pike. Yeah. I will see you Friday for sweater weather and an update on my loom project and the giveaways at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. Everybody have a fantastic week. Thank you, Janice and Drea and Gita. They're the same in my mind, for doing that great moderation on the social media. And I will see you all Friday. Thanks, Emma. Talk to you soon.